I have tried every meal kit delivery service in the world. Literally. Let's be honest, there are so many out there. It's like dating. You never really know what you're going to get, but you hope it's something tasty. I can confidently say, since trying Home Chef, I have never been more satisfied. Home Chef provides fresh ingredients and chef designed recipes conveniently delivered to your doorstep to simplify your cooking experience. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 18 free meals plus free dessert for life. And of course, free shipping on your first box. Go to homechef.com/ratchet. That's homechef.com/ratchet for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. homechef.com/ratchet. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. I see away luggage a lot when I travel. As much as I love its looks, I prefer soft side suitcases and always wished Away made one. Well, guess what? Now they do. This suitcase seriously looks better than any old school soft side suitcases I've seen and is designed to be lighter than others on the market. Soft side comes in 4 of their best selling sizes and tried and true colors. Made from a high strength nylon, the bag is tear resistant as well as weather resistant. The bag is soft but not sensitive, super durable, flexible, and expandable, which I love. I can fit everything I need in there. You gotta check out the new soft side luggage from Away. Head on over to awaytravel.com/ratchet. That's awaytravel.com/ratchet to see the new soft side luggage from Away. awaytravel.com/ratchet.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. When you use Angie for your home projects, you know all your jobs will be done well. Roof repair? Done well. Kitchen sink install? Done well. Deck upgrades? Done well. Electrical upgrade? Done well. Angie's been connecting homeowners with skilled pros for nearly 30 years, so we know the difference between done and done well. Hire high-quality, certified pros at Angie.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, what in the entire fuck is going on? You are listening to Ratchet and Respectable. Yo, everything we were supposed to talk about today, we're not talking about. Last night in New York, Diddy got arrested by the feds. He was staying at the Park Hyatt. The feds were supposed to arrest him today, which is Tuesday. They decided to arrest him a day early. The feds won't say why. I'm guessing, with no information, that they thought he was going to flee. But as I'm speaking right now, it is 3:46 p.m. on Tuesday. I had some errands to run this morning, and I needed to gather all my information, and I needed to let this story play out a little bit more so we could get all the information possible and relevant into this podcast episode. Obviously, we're recording on Tuesday. There will be so much more information by Friday. But as of today, we're going to roll with what we got. Just the facts, a little speculation, a little context. Today, we're going to talk about the grand jury indictment that got him arrested last night. We're going to talk about the press conference with, what's his name? I wrote it down. Damian Williams, black man, U.S. attorney. We're going to talk about the press conference with the AR-15s without the serial numbers. Like, nigga, what are you doing? You got bodyguards. You got security. I was like, why he got AR-15s? He going to shoot up a high school? We're going to talk about that press conference because that was wild. Listening to this very dignified man say freak off 15 times, I was like, wait. I'm watching the press conference with my mom. She going to ask me, 1,000 bottles of baby oil? Why they need so much baby oil? I just got up and walked to my room. I was like, I'm not doing this with you today. I had to explain to my mother what a gangbang was last week. And I was like, you know what? I'm seriously about to Judy Winslow, just go up the stairs and never return. And that's just all y'all will ever see of me. I'm not explaining this shit to my mom. My godmother is a nurse. Nurses know everything. She can go ask her. We need to talk about, what's this other document? Diddy's bail package. He's put up a $50 million bail package, 5-0. That includes his mama's house. I'm like, where's your monies? You was worth like $900 million a year ago. Now you putting up your mama's house as collateral for your bail? Huh? Where's your monies? And then this detention memo which is longer than the actual indictment. The indictment is only 14 pages. The detention memo is 16 pages. It has details that aren't even in the indictment. It's all crazy. But let's start at the beginning. Last night, we heard Diddy got arrested by the feds. The document was still sealed. There was the promise that the grand jury indictment would be unlocked this morning. As promised, it was. So we're going to start literally on page 1. I was watching, remember I saying I was watching with my mom, TMZ. It was Harvey. What's the black dude with the locks? I stopped paying attention to TMZ after Van left. They see these types of things all the time. And they were like, for an indictment, like it's 14 pages of jam-packed. Like it's short, but it's powerful. It's a short king. The United States of America versus Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, a.k.a. P. Diddy, a.k.a. Diddy, a.k.a. P.D., a.k.a. Love. Count 1. Racketeering conspiracy, otherwise known as a RICO charge. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I'm going to read you the highlights. Although this whole thing is one long highlight because nigga, what? It's also a grand summary, if you will, of all the things that have been in all the lawsuits that we've discussed over the last, 10 months. A lot of stuff from Cassie, a little bit from Dawn, a lot from, what was the guy? Rodney, the male producer, the one that said he had pictures and videos and everything, and had pictures in his documents. It's a lot of stuff from their lawsuits, likely from their testimony as well. We're not really sure who all was over there, who went to talk to the grand jury. But I imagine at the very least, those 3 were. Let's get into it. Racketeering conspiracy. We're still on page 1. For decades, Sean Combs, and then they list all his aliases, the defendant, abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees, resources, and influence of the multifaceted business empire that he controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor. That sounds like some of the things Dawn was talking about her lawsuit, kidnapping. Remember we saw the video of Cassie trying to leave and then he literally he beats her up in the hallway and drags her back to the room? That is considered kidnapping. Arson. They talking about when he put a Molotov cocktail in Kid Cudi's car? Could be. Could be other instances. We don't know just yet. Bribery and obstruction of justice. It says Sean Combs and all of his aliases, we still on page 1, operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities. This is important because the feds coming after all of this. The last 2 pages of this document are about forfeiture. The feds want it all. Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, Combs Global, collectively known as the Combs Business. Corporate entities in the Combs business included, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. Where my lawyers at? Because he stepped down or has been kicked out from a lot of this stuff. But can they go after Ciroc? Can they go after Revolt? He's no longer chairman, but that was his company. We'll get some lawyers to talk to us by Friday's episode. If not on Friday's episode, I'll do what I can. But put a pin in all the businesses that were just mentioned. We just hit page 2. It says, at all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals. The abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. This basically describes the freak-offs. At times, Combs and others acting at his direction made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. Still on page 2, physical abuse by Sean Combs, the defendant, was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years. It started before that, but this is what they have evidence of. Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. Here they refer to the video of him beating on Cassie, but they never used Cassie's name. They said including one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video and later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. We didn't know about this. It says when a member of the hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. Combs' violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. We're on page 3. Sean Combs, the defendant, used the Combs business, they talking about this like it's the mob, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees, including security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors and other close associates, acted as Combs intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. Still on page 6, it goes on to outline the Combs enterprise. Literally, like the mob. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The Combs enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associates, constituted an enterprise as defined by Title 18 United States Code, blah, 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 blah. Once again, the Combs enterprise consisted of Sean Combs, entities within the Combs business, including but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprise, and Combs Global, individuals employed by and associated with the Combs business, and others known and unknown. Harve Pierre has not been arrested to my knowledge. If that man, and this is not me giving legal advice, if that man got a lick of sense, he should be on a plane out of this country as we speak. Oh, just a word about the extradition thing, because people were like, why didn't he flee? People were like, why isn't Diddy in Bali? Like, why didn't he leave and go be with Russell? Just for clarity, Russell is chilling over in Bali because the U.S. doesn't want him bad enough. I don't know if he has a criminal charge. He has civil cases. Bali in the U.S. and any other country in the world, Ghana is another one, doesn't have an official extradition treaty with the U.S. So there's nothing formal in place that says if we want somebody, this is how we go get them. We'll trade people back and forth with you. Like there's nothing on the books. However, the U.S. can still have a conversation with the Balinese government and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And the Balinese government can say, hey, we cool with it. Come get who you need. Just because there's no extradition treaty doesn't mean they can't be extradited. Just for clarity, that's not the point. The point is, the Combs enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs enterprise. The Combs enterprise was engaged in and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs was the leader of the Combs enterprise. Sean Combs, the defendant, and others known and unknown, participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs enterprise's affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. If you are a regular listener to Ratchet and Respectable, and I hope that you are, you know that I am a huge advocate for therapy. I think everyone needs some, especially the people that think they don't. Trust me, friend, you do. It's good for you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I love how easy BetterHelp makes it to receive professional help. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/ratchet today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ratchet. I have tried every meal kit delivery service in the world. Literally. Let's be honest, there are so many out there. It's like dating. You never really know what you're going to get, but you hope it's something tasty. I can confidently say, since trying Home Chef, I have never been more satisfied. Home Chef provides fresh ingredients and chef-designed recipes conveniently delivered to your doorstep to simplify your cooking experience. Whether you prefer classic meal kits with pre-portioned ingredients and easy instructions, speedy recipes ready in less than 30 minutes, or oven-ready kits with pre-chopped ingredients, Home Chef has you and the entire family covered for delicious meals without the hassle. Home Chef has over 30 options a week and serves a variety of dietary needs, so you don't have to worry about what to make ahead of time. And my favorite part, not only is it convenient, but it's economical too. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 18 free meals plus free dessert for life. And of course, free shipping on your first box. Go to homechef.com/ratchet. That's homechef.com/ratchet for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. homechef.com/ratchet. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. On page 4, purposes of the Combs enterprise. There's a bit of repetition here. Operating a global business, media, entertainment, lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, recording studio, apparel line, alcoholic spirits, marketing agency, television network, and media company. The other purpose, you know how they give definitions in Webster's? That was one. This is 2. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, the defendant, as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry. Another purpose, enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader, and in particular, those who demonstrated loyalties to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Also, preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of the Combs enterprise, including the power of its leader, Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Another purpose, fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. This goes on and on. More purposes of the Combs enterprise. Securing absolute loyalty from members of the Combs enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats. Protecting the Combs enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. They really got this man out here like the whole Sopranos. What was Jamie? What's Jamie's real name? Ghost. They out here talking about like this the Barksdale organization. Woo, child. Let's see. We're on page 5. Means and methods of enterprise. Let's skip to the good part. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. We first heard of this in Cassie's lawsuit. If anyone is wondering what a freak-off is, including my mother who asked me earlier today, and I was like, not doing this with you today. Absolutely not. Freak-offs, and you know she's listened to this podcast, were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. You can't find no local people to fuck. You gotta fly people in. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days. Put a pin in that. Remember how Dawn talked about how Diddy was high all the time and we keep them up for like 3 and 4 days? I thought about that when I saw lasted multiple days. Who is fucking for multiple days? That's why these mofos needed IVs. We didn't get to that part yet. Okay, hold on. Sometimes lasted multiple days and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. I would also add to keep them awake. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. I would also wonder, and I need a doctor to weigh in here, IVs can flush your system. Does it get traces of the drugs out faster too? I'm just thinking because I had surgery a couple months ago and I had to go to the bathroom like every 5 minutes. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm not even drinking anything. The nurse was like, oh, the IV is flushing your system because they put me under to get the meds out my system. And I was like, oh, is that what's happening here? Where's my godmother? She's a nurse. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors. Would that be you, Harv? Security staff, household staff. And just so we're clear, the reason I keep mentioning Harv is because there's also 2 lawsuits against him. He's named in Dawn's lawsuit. And then we talked about a lawsuit where I think the girl was 16 at the time. She's a woman now. This happened in the 90s, I believe, allegedly. She met Harv and somebody else in one state and they put her on a jet. They all went to, I want to say, Diddy's recording studio in New York. The girl had pictures and everything. And she alleges that they, all three of them, assaulted her in the bathroom and left her on the floor. And that's why I keep mentioning Harv's name, because he's come up in a number of lawsuits. If he wants freedom, a plane now. I'm not trying to help him. I'm just saying, if I were him, nigga, get on a plane. High-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees facilitated the freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. Pause. They were bringing their own linens to the hotel to fuck on. 1. Lighting, because you know he's recording all this shit. So when Cassie wrote about, when this came up in Cassie's lawsuit, in my head I just pictured everything. You know what happens in the dark, comes to the light. Nigga, you was bringing your own lights because he was filming it. He was literally making a production. He was treating it like porn. And then also, too, lubricant, okay, who knows who or what is going in which holes where. Lubricant is necessary. The baby oil is the thing that gets me here. Only because all these people, multiple people having sex with sex workers, people who have sex for a living, right? So lots of sex occurring. When it's consensual, I don't care who you're fucking. These people are drugged. This is not consensual sex. It's people who have a lot of sex. Baby oil literally deteriorates latex. Baby oil in latex makes condoms pointless. So it made me wonder the amount of bodily fluid, and then also just statistically, a bunch of people got STDs, STIs, sexually transmitted infections. Like, all these people gotta have some stuff. They talking about they brought in IVs. I'm like, did you also bring in Plan B? Did you also bring in HIV testing? Did you also bring in nurses? It's just a lot of bodily fluid and essentially unprotected sex. I just somehow just assumed condoms would be involved. But if there's baby oil, and later in the indictment, they'll talk about it was 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Like, condoms are useless with baby oil. Just a bit of baby oil, 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Y'all using a lot of baby oil. My mom was like, what is all the baby oil for? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Also worth adding, there are entire sections of porn sites about baby oil. Like baby oil, people glistening and slipping and sliding and rubbing the baby oil on with gloves. Like it's a whole section of porn sites. I just remember Cassie talking about the white nail polish. So there's a visual element, and he's recording and there's lighting. These tapes, which the nigga kept. Even after the Cassie lawsuit, the feds got him when they raided the house. We'll get to that. We're still talking about members and associates of the Combs enterprise. The indictment says, it's still page 6, they would clean the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try and mitigate room damage. Just because I read a couple pages into what did I call it? The document about his detention, where the feds are arguing why he shouldn't get bail, why he should be kept in jail until the trial. There's a footnote that talks about damage to a hotel room where Diddy paid 46,000 American USD dollars and dineros in damages. It says the members and associates of the Combs enterprise would arrange for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs. They would resupply Combs with requested supplies. They would deliver large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and they would schedule the delivery of IV fluids. There's a note here that says, in or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. My nigga, you was keeping this shit in the house with the girls? The girls are in the house. The daughters, Kim's kids, the twins, they was in the house with this shit. Also, the Cassie lawsuit came out around November or so. After that lawsuit came out, you was still planning to do more freak-offs? You still kept evidence? If you don't go to jail for nothing else, you don't go to prison for nothing else, you deserve to go for being stupid. Why would you keep this shit? You got kids in the house and got narcotics and evidence of freak-offs. Why? Ego is a hell of a drug, man. On page 7, Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from the freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. Victims believed they could not refuse Combs' demand without risking their financial or job security or without repercussions in the forms of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. Still on page 7. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs' security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims and witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, i.e. erased, as well as a drum magazine. I believe in the press conference, the U.S. attorney said it was 57 rounds. Again, nigga, what are you shooting up? Page 8. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs' control over victims by following his direction regarding financial payments to victims, advancing or suppressing the victim's career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence toward the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the Combs enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations, such as hotels or Combs' residences. Remember, Dawn would talk about how he was out the house and she would leave, and then he would call her and curse her out and threaten to kill her to make her come back? Somebody told. Remember also Dawn's lawsuit. She would tell Cassie, like, you got to leave. You got to go. Like, you got to get out of here. And then he would curse her out. Somebody told. Back to this indictment. We were just talking about preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels and residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed, aka Cassie sitting up in the house. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. For all the people who be like, why don't they leave? They did. And he would make people come back. When employees, witnesses to his abuse, or others threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engage in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. See Dawn being locked in that car for the whole time it took her daddy to drive from Baltimore to New York. The indictment mentions acts of violence included kidnapping and arson. In addition, on multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people. What do you mean, Combs threw both objects and people? Oh, no, he's literally picking up and throwing people. Okay. As well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal or law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023, last year, following public allegations of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. This next shit don't make no damn sense. On phone calls, you still talking on the phone? Avon Barksdale wouldn't talk on the phone back in the early 2000s. You on the phone, nigga? Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with a false narrative of events in an effort to conceal Combs' crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. Nigga, what's the line in The Wire? Stringer was trying to talk to, this is after Avon was in jail. Stringer was trying to talk to the new team. It was all young boys. He was trying to apply what he was learning in business school to the drug game. He was trying to be a professor. He was trying to teach them, the drug dealers, the corner boys, the business of selling drugs. And the nigga was taking notes, and Stringer saw him and he was like, nigga, I might have added the nigga, but it's important for the story. Are you taking notes on a criminal enterprise? Nigga, Diddy, are you recording evidence of a criminal? Are you recording evidence of a criminal conspiracy, nigga? And did? I'm not a criminal. I just watch a lot of crime stories. I know better than this. Nigga. That's all you can say sometimes. That just sums up so much, nigga. Page 9. This talks about the racketeering conspiracy the Combs enterprise engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, confederated. That's a good word, confederated. And agreed together. The alliteration here is beautiful. Whoever wrote this, I mean, I know they went to law school, but I feel like there's an English major somewhere in here. Knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States. And they talk about the code that is violated. They said that is to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity as the term is defined in Title 18 United States Code, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I just want to read that again. That's just a beautiful, juicy piece of writing. You know, I was supposed to go to law school. I only took the LSAT. But I specialized in language, writing, and rhetoric. I get excited about things like this. Knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other. That's juicy. That's some juicy writing there. Still on racketeering conspiracy, still on page 9. The Combs enterprise was involved allegedly in multiple acts involving kidnapping, chargeable under the following provisions of state law, blah, 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 blah. Multiple acts of arson, chargeable under the following provisions of state law, California Penal Code, blah, 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 blah. Multiple acts of bribery, multiple acts indictable under Title 18 United States Code, blah, 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 relating to tampering with the witness, victim, or informant, relating to forced labor, relating to sex trafficking, relating to transportation and inducement to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal sexual activities. Multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine. They call it cocaine. Oxycodone? Something really, really fancy, which I think translates to GHC. Ketamine. I don't know this other stuff. I can't pronounce these other stuff. It's hydroxybutyric. I don't know. What's the street name for this shit? I don't have friends that sell drugs anymore. I see away luggage a lot when I travel. As much as I love its looks, I prefer soft side suitcases and always wished Away made one. Well, guess what? Now they do. This suitcase seriously looks better than any old school soft side suitcases I've seen and is designed to be lighter than others on the market. Soft side comes in 4 of their best selling sizes and tried and true colors. There is truly something for everyone in the lineup. 2 carry-on suitcases, 2 check sizes, 4 colors, black, blue, pink, my favorite, and gray. Made from a high-strength nylon, the bag is tear-resistant as well as weather-resistant. I spilled a little coffee on the gray one once, and I can confirm the claim holds up. The bag is soft but not sensitive, super durable, flexible, and expandable, which I love. I can fit everything I need in there. Plus, bonus points for the compression pad system that helps you pack it all in, and the anti-tipping stabilizer that holds the bag steady while expanded, even when it's overpacked. And both of those are proprietary to Away. I love my Away suitcase. This is not your grandmother's soft side. It's very, very cute. You gotta check out the new soft side luggage from Away. Head on over to awaytravel.com/ratchet. That's awaytravel.com/ratchet to see the new soft side luggage from Away. awaytravel.com/ratchet. Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Even the Royals is a podcast from Wondery that pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, and from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. Like the true stories behind the 6 wives of Henry VIII, whose lives were so much more than just divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Or Esther of Burundi, a princess who fled her home country to become France's first Black supermodel. To Queen Christina of Sweden, an icon who traded in dresses for pants, had an affair with her lady in waiting, and eventually gave up her crown because she refused to get married. Throw in her involvement in a murder and an attempt to become Queen of Poland, and you have one of the most unforgettable legacies in royal history. Instead of settling for a predictable royal life, these women blew theirs up in the name of freedom and embracing their true selves. You're a regular listener, you know how much I love that narrative. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus. Okay, that was just count one. On page 11, we get to count two, which is sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Victim one. From at least in or about 2009, up to and including in or about 2018, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, the defendant, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion, as described in Title 18 United States Code, blah, 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 would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim one, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim one to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim one was engaging in commercial sex acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. Cassie is victim one? That sounds like Cassie's lawsuit. Page 12, count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution. From at least in or about 2009 up until in or about 2024. Nigga, you was still doing this year? This year? After Cassie? Sean Combs, the defendant, knowingly transported an individual in interstate and foreign commerce with intent that the individual engage in prostitution and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, Combs transported, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. Nigga. 2009 to 2024? You ain't trying to clean up your life after that Cassie lawsuit? You didn't think that, maybe people were on to you. After that whole flurry of other lawsuits that came quickly after Cassie, still in the year of our Lord, 2024, this year, nigga. Still page 12. Forfeiture allegations, i.e., the feds are coming for where the money resides. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 1 of this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States any and all interest the defendant acquired or maintained in violation of Title 18 United States Code, blah, blah, blah. Any and all interest in, securities of, claims against, and property or contractual rights of any kind affording a source of influence over the enterprise named and described herein, which the defendant established, operated, controlled, conducted, and participated in the conduct of, in violation of Title 18, United States Code, blah, 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 and any and all property constituting and derived from proceeds obtained directly and indirectly said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense. Okay, remember earlier in the document when I made the point of talking about, oh, Bad Boy Records and Combs Global, Combs Spirits and blah, 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 all of that? That's what they're going after here. That's what I just read to you in legalese. In short, and again, didn't go to law school, only took the LSAT. Watch a lot of crime shows and a bunch of Law and Order, like all the seasons of Law and Order, and some Scandal. Okay, essentially, they're saying that like Bad Boy Records, I mean, yeah, okay, like it was a record company, but like all that shit, like Sean John, Ciroc, The Water, the marketing agency, like all that shit was basically just one big criminal enterprise. As such, since it's all criminal shit anyway, the feds want it. I asked my mama, because she used to be an accountant for the feds, and I was like, if they seize this money, like, where does it go? Because we're going to get to a part in a little bit. And they were like, so yeah, if you took the money and you put it in other people's names, like the kids, like, we want that shit too. If this trial goes forward, which it will, and he's found guilty, his kids ain't seeing none of this money. The feds going to take everything. I was like, but mama, where does the money go? And she was like, where do you think the money go? And I said, mama, I don't really know. Mama, where does the money go? My mama was like, it goes to the U.S. Treasury, Demetria. I said, but what about the kids? And she was like, yeah, United States government ain't taking care of his kids. He was supposed to do that. I said, but the kids. And she said, yeah. I said, what they gonna do? And she said, I guess they're gonna have to get some jobs. Shh. It's a cold world. It's a cold world. Page 13. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of this indictment. What was count 2? Let me scroll back up. Sex trafficking by force. Basically the same shit. The feds want all his money. Still on page 13. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 3 of this indictment. That was transportation to engage in prostitution. Exactly the same wording. Essentially, run us all your monies in real fancy ways. Finally, page 14. Substitute assets provision. If any of the above described forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of the defendant, A, cannot be located upon exercise of due diligence, B, has been transferred or sold to or deposited with a third person, C, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, i.e., they try to put it in offshore account, has been substantially diminished in value. I don't know exactly what that means. I need a lawyer to help me out with that one. And E, has been commingled with other property which cannot be subdivided without difficulty. You try to sell off some shit, merge it with something else. In short, the feds are coming after that shit too. This nigga is fucked. It is the intent of the United States, pursuant to Title 18, blah, 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 and Title 21, blah, 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 and Title 28, blah, 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 to seek forfeiture of any other property of the defendant up to the value of the above forfeitable property. And then it lists a whole bunch of titles and codes. Signed by Damian Williams. We're about to talk about him in a minute. U.S. Attorney. Oh, shit. I just checked in on Threads. They've denied bail. Holy shit. They about to hold this man in jail. Let me just double check. As people say anything on the internet. Diddy denied bail. Holy shit. I mean, I totally get why they would. Diddy denied bail, according to AP News 12 minutes ago. Holy shit. This must be how my parents felt when OJ went on the run. I didn't have a connection to the OJ case because I didn't grow up watching him. I mean, I saw him in like Hertz commercials and maybe in movies, but I didn't have context for all of who OJ was. The OJ Simpson trial happened when I was in high school. Like, I knew it was a big deal. You know what? OJ Simpson for the rest of the world. When Marion Barry got caught on camera smoking crack in that hotel room while he was trying to get some tail from a woman who wasn't his wife. My parents went ballistic. I was late for school that morning. My father was supposed to drive me to school. It was only 10 minutes away. He could not pull himself away from the television. They were running that Marion Barry video on a loop. And mind you, my dad was affiliated with politics. My mom works for the federal government. everybody in DC, like even people who don't work in politics, work in politics. It's the industry of the area. Everyone knows politics, from like the mail carrier to like the person who denies you extra cheese at Chipotle. Like everyone just knows politics really, really well because you know somebody who works for the federal government. If it ain't your mama or your auntie, it's somebody you went to school with, it's somebody you go to church with, it's your next door neighbor. Like it's impossible. My father could not pull himself away from the TV. He was just standing there staring, just like shaking his head. It was so unbelievable. The look on my father's face the morning Marion Barry was caught on video smoking crack is the same way I'm feeling right now about Diddy being arrested. It's unbelievable to me. Even after all these lawsuits, even after rumors I've heard for years and years and years and years and years when I was in New York, like it's completely unbelievable to me. It's like too big to fail. And yet, even after the raids on his house, even after all these crazy stories that have been coming out over the last few months, you know how bad I wanted to go to Diddy parties? When Diddy was in his Hamptons phase and they were doing these white parties in the Hamptons, there was nothing more on earth I wanted to do. Diddy's 40th birthday party at the Plaza, I wanted to go to that so bad. One of my friends begged me to go with him. And he was like, D, I got to in. I got to in. This nigga snuck in. I want to say like through where like they take the garbage out. Like he snuck in through there. Like you would never know. The pictures look like he came in through the front entrance. But he was like, D, I got to connect. I got to connect. And I was like, I'm not going through the back door of the Plaza. The judge really denied bail. Oh my God. We have a lot to get through. Let's not get stuck there. Let's move along. Damian Williams, we talked about him at the top of the episode. The U.S. attorney who signed the indictment. He also did a press conference. I was at the nail salon. I couldn't watch it live, but I had my headphones and I had my phone. So I watched it on YouTube. I had to watch it twice because once I just watched it. The second time, after my nails were dry, I sat in my car and took notes. He summarized the indictment, 3-count indictment, RICO charges, sex trafficking, interstate transportation of prostitution from 2008 to the present. They showed pictures of the defaced, i.e. no serial numbers, 3 AR-15s. That leads me to believe, seeing as how they don't have serial numbers, that these are not licensed weapons. And the large capacity drum magazine, I think I said it was 57 rounds before, 59 rounds. Again, nigga, what are you shooting? Trying to be like Lil Murder in season 2? After old boy killed his lover? Former lover. The AR-15s were found during the raid. They also found video and photos of freak-offs with multiple victims, which you dumb fuck. Why would you keep evidence of criminal shit? U.S. Attorney Damian Williams also noted, he said, a year ago, Diddy received the key to New York City, and today he's being indicted. It's insane. It's insane. He noted that the Fed's case is not done. He asked victims to come forward, and he dropped the hotline number. The last time I've seen somebody do this was the homie, Kim Fox, Cook County State's attorney, when she was going after R. Kelly. And she was like, we are looking for victims. We know you were out there. Please call this number and let us know your story. We are here to help. Oh, dear. Diddy put forth a bail package. I was outraged by what I read. He and his attorneys proposed a $50 million bail package. I sent it to one of my friends because she was like, I need something to read with my coffee. I'm like, here you go. This is from Diddy's attorney to the judge. Mr. Sean Combs, through his counsel, submits this letter to the court for release on certain specified conditions. It notes that yesterday, Mr. Combs was arrested on an indictment charging him with the following offenses, blah, 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 blah. For the reasons set forth below, we ask this court to release Mr. Combs pursuant to our proposed bail package. They argue that Mr. Combs is not a flight risk or in danger to anyone in the community. Nigga, did you read the same indictment I did? They say that Mr. Combs is eminently, I just gotta be clear that I'm quoting this, eminently trustworthy, that he is demonstrably committed to showing his innocence in court, and that he should be released on the conditions proposed in order to do so. It says the court should know that when it became apparent to his counsel that Mr. Combs would at some point be formally charged, he did something quote and unquote extraordinary. He left his home in Miami and traveled to New York, the very location of the prosecutors and agents investigating him. Through counsel, Mr. Combs promptly told the government that he had voluntarily come to New York, offered to tell them specifically where he was, and offered to turn himself in at the appropriate time. Even though Mr. Combs came to New York, authorized his lawyers to tell the government of his location, and offered to self-surrender, the government effected an arrest last evening. Pause. Is Harvey over at TMZ not cutting checks? There's no way in potential hell Diddy got arrested at the Park Hyatt in New York and nobody got that shit on video. TMZ, cut the check. Where is the video? The document continues. This was not the first action Mr. Combs took to show his trustworthiness and lack of flight risk. Indeed, it is a pattern even before the March 25th, 2024 searches on Mr. Combs' residences. Mr. Combs and his counsel have been fully aware that the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York had been conducting an investigation involving allegations concerning racketeering and sex trafficking and other offenses. Knowing for these many months that he would be indicted, Mr. Combs has done everything to work with the prosecutor in ways that are unusual, if not unprecedented. It says since at least April 2024, Mr. Combs has been making efforts to sell his airplane. We informed the government of these efforts in May 2024, and just this weekend, Mr. Combs entered into a letter of intent with a party to sell it. Mr. Combs understands he is not to travel to Los Angeles, where the plane had been located this week, and further, that the plane is not to be brought into any district in which he is located until it is sold. They also proposed home detention with GPS, i.e. an ankle monitor, and then all other standard conditions of pretrial supervision. Also important on page 3, it says that his attorneys took possession of his passport on April 1st. Does that mean anything? Like if I give my passport to my attorney, like, okay, then my attorney would keep me from fleeing the country, but I'm also paying my attorney. Couldn't I just ask for the passport back? It's not like I give it to the attorney and the attorney turns it over to the police. Like the attorney just has it. My attorney knows I can't leave the country. But if I tell my attorney, like, I know I gave you my passport, but like, I want to go now. And technically I haven't been indicted for anything. So like, I just want my passport back and I can leave. That means absolutely fucking nothing. They make a point in saying that his attorneys have had his passport since April 1st. They advised the feds that AUSA, what Angela was on Power, of the fact that the attorneys had Mr. Combs' passport, that we would not return it to him, and that he would not leave the country during the pendency while the investigation was pending. They saying all this fancy shit. We have, in fact, maintained the passport, and Mr. Combs has not, in fact, left the country, despite knowing the investigation was ongoing, despite having a plane at his disposal, despite not being charged with any crime. Again, this is their argument on why Diddy should get bail. So they proposed a $50 million bail package, co-signed by Sean Combs, his mother, his sister, the mother of his oldest daughter, that would be Chance's mom, and his 3 adult sons. Why does he need a co-signer? I swear I read he was worth like $900 million. I remember there was a conversation about how Diddy was close to being a billionaire and how Jay-Z became a billionaire before Diddy. The man was worth $900 million like last year. And now he needs his children, his mama, his sister, and his baby mama, and his 3 adult children to co-sign? Diddy need to co-sign? Do any of the people mentioned combined have $50 million? The bail package is secured by equity in Mr. Combs' residence on Star Island. The appraised value of the home, which has been paid off, is 48 million American USD dollars and dineros. For the remaining 2 million, secured by the equity, the cost of Mr. Combs' mother's home, But they put the address in here? Are you crazy? In Miami, Florida. He put up his mama's house? His mama's house. Nigga, where's your monies? You putting up $48 million your own house. Like, okay, the extra $2 million, you don't have that in cash, or you gonna put up your mama's house instead? Where is his money? Is he saving that for his lawyers? By the way, who are his lawyers? I saw some white man on the news. God forgive me. I just assumed he was Jewish because, Black people love Jewish lawyers. But I'm like, who is his dream team? Because there is no Cochran. Is F. Lee Bailey still with us? What about the other guy? I just remember he had bad hair, but he was a legal genius. The one who did all the DNA stuff. I think he was played by the guy that played Harry on Sex and the City. You know what I'm talking about? Pause. If you did not watch FX, The People versus O.J. Simpson, that was some of the best TV I've ever seen. Courtney Vance as Johnny Cochran, amazing television. Was John Travolta F. Lee Bailey? No, Shapiro. Ross from Friends was Kardashian. He played Robert Kardashian. Amazing TV. I mean, absolutely fucking amazing TV. Go to Hulu. I think they still have that FX deal. Go watch it on Hulu. Amazing TV. That's not the point. The point is, he done put up his mama's house. Again, this is the proposal. Mr. Combs' travel will be restricted to the Southern District of Florida and the Southern District of New York to attend court, meet with his counsel, and attend medical appointments, which we will address to the court in a separate sealed submission. What medical issues he got? He also wanted to be able to travel to the Eastern District of New York or the District of New Jersey, only to the extent that his travel to and from New York involves an airport in those districts. And notes, once again, the passport was surrendered. This is an interesting note. The passports of his family members were also surrendered to counsel after the raids on Mr. Combs' home. They done turned the baby's passports in. Janice Combs, Mama Combs, don't have her passport. She can't go to the islands. Chance Combs, what Chance got to do with it? Baby Chance just got out of high school. She just graduated. They took Chance's passport. They took the twins. They took their passports. They even took baby Love's passport. They didn't take none of the boys' passports. They just took the passports for the women in the family? Huh? Christian has a lawsuit against him, does he not? A young woman on a boat absolutely sued Christian for trying to assault her. I think it was a try. I don't think he succeeded. We read the lawsuit on here. He absolutely has a lawsuit against him. His passport isn't turned over? I saw Quincy at the White House a couple days ago walking around with his daddy, his biological daddy. They were so cute. But Quincy still has his passport. What's the other baby? Justin. That's Misa child. I keep his name out my mouth out of respect. But he still got his passport. That don't make no sense. Why only the women giving up their passports, but not the sons? That's weird. The judge must have thought so too, because he absolutely did deny Diddy's bail. And once I read the document, because once I saw the U.S. attorney, his case for why Diddy should have no bail, I'm like, sir, it's like you didn't even read the indictment against you. So, all right. So this is the government. It says the government respectfully submits this letter in anticipation of the defendant's appearance before this court later today, and in support of the government's request for the defendant's detention pending trial. I have not read this document, so we're going to go through it. We're going to read it together. It says, as set forth below. How many pages is this document? 2 of 16. It's longer than the damn indictment. As set forth below, there is no condition or combination of conditions that will reasonably assure the appearance of the defendant as required and the safety of others and the community, not to mention the integrity of the proceedings. As reflected by the gravity of the charges in the indictment, the defendant is dangerous and poses an ongoing threat to the safety of the community. If released, he remains a serious risk of flight despite the conditions offered by his counsel. Most glaringly, The defendant also poses a significant risk of obstructing justice. Indeed, and as set forth below, during the course of the charged conduct, the defendant has attempted to bribe security staff and threatened and interfered with witnesses to his criminal conduct. He has already tried to obstruct the government's investigation of this case, repeatedly contacting victims and witnesses and feeding them false narratives of events as described in detail below. There are simply no conditions that will ensure the defendant's efforts to obstruct and tamper with witnesses will stop. The defendant, therefore, cannot overcome the statutory presumption in favor of detention, and the court should order him detained.
You can live out your MasterChef dream when you find a professional on Angie to tackle your dream kitchen remodel. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.
All right, page 2. Combs' use of violence, threats, and coercion. It starts with sex trafficking and abuse. I'm only going to read the stuff that didn't come up in the indictment. Still on page 2. I mentioned it before, but let's just talk about it because it comes up here. It says the defendant arranged freak-offs with the assistance of members and associates of the enterprise, including employees of his business, and the hotel rooms where they were staged often sustained significant damages. And there's a footnote. In approximately 2012 in Manhattan, the defendant paid over $46,000. I think I said $48,000 before, but just for correction, $46,000 to cover damages to a penthouse hotel room following a freak-off. It talks about providing controlled substances, including ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, to female victims so they would continually engage in freak-offs despite fatigue, physical and emotional exhaustion, and pain. At least a dozen witnesses will confirm that they personally observed the defendant's violence towards women and or the injuries sustained by women at the defendant's hand. One incident of physical abuse occurred when a female victim was attempting to leave the hotel following a March 2016 freak-off. Cassie, this abuse was captured on video surveillance and publicly reported in May 2024. 120% Cassie is testifying. Okay. The defendant's assaults often resulted in serious injuries to the victims that took days or weeks to heal. Okay, once again, I'm only reading stuff that didn't come up in the indictment. It says, in addition to the defendant's physical, sexual, and emotional abuse of his romantic partners, the defendant repeatedly engaged in acts of violence directed towards his employees and others. Numerous witnesses, including the defendant's employees and others, observed and experienced violence from the defendant firsthand and sustained lasting trauma as a result. For example, in the early morning hours of December 22nd, 2011, the exact date, the defendant and a co-conspirator kidnapped an individual at gunpoint to facilitate breaking into and entering the residence of another, individual 1. Multiple witnesses would testify at trial to the events surrounding the kidnapping and break-in, the latter of which is corroborated by police reports and other records. Approximately 2 weeks later, the defendant's co-conspirators set fire to individual 1's vehicle. Is this Kid Cudi? By slicing open the car's convertible top and dropping a Molotov cocktail inside the interior. Police and fire department reports extensively document the arson and conclude that the fire was intentionally set. Multiple witnesses would also testify to the defendant bragging about his role in destroying individual 1's car. More broadly, since at least 2008, allegations of the defendant's physical abuse of women and others have been publicly reported in the media, including in Hollywood blogs and on podcasts. Law enforcement reports corroborate the police responded to several instances of the defendant's violence, including assaults against victims and other individuals. More recently, there's been an outpouring of other public allegations against the defendant, including claims of threats and physical and sexual violence dating as far back as the 1990s. In short, the defendant's violent tendencies are widely known. However, at no point during the past decades has the threat of public exposure or law enforcement intervention deterred the defendant from continuing his abuse. Page 4. Firearms. The defendant and members of the enterprise, including the defendant's security personnel, at times carried firearms, and the defendant himself carried and brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others. Indeed, some victims were aware of the defendant's access to firearms. On one occasion, the defendant forced a female victim to carry a firearm on his behalf, and on another occasion, he pointed a firearm at a female victim. The defendant continues to have access to guns, including illegal firearms. In March 2024, during searches of the defendant's residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s. We talked about that. And they have included pictures of the AR-15s with the serial numbers obscured. 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in the defendant's Miami bedroom closet, stored broken down in parts along with magazines that were loaded with ammunition as depicted below. In addition, 6 legally purchased guns with serial numbers, some of which were stored in gun safes, were recovered from the defendant's residences. Although these particular guns, both the legal and illegal firearms, were seized, their presence in the defendant's home demonstrates that the defendant has access to and surrounds himself with both guns and ammunition. Likewise, even if the defendant were personally restrained by the court from obtaining new firearms himself, he could retain access to them through others. There's a footnote. Certain of the firearms seized during the March 2024 searches were licensed to a current member of Combs' security staff. In addition to that individual, during the course of the charged conspiracy, Combs has employed other security staff members with significant criminal history, including violent crimes and firearms offenses. In sum, the defendant's regular use of violence and threats of violence, as well as the coercion described above against the victims and others, fostered a culture of fear in which these individuals believed they were unable to reject the defendant's demands without subjecting themselves to physical violence or other abuse. We're on page 6. Combs bribed witnesses and obstructed justice. Throughout the time period charged in the indictment, when the defendant faced the possibility that his violent and criminal conduct could become public, the defendant and other members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims not to report what they saw or heard to law enforcement. They talk about the Cassie video from March 2016 when Cassie was trying to leave a freak off and he beat her. They talk again about the hotel security staff intervening and Diddy offered him a bribe for his silence. Security guard refused the defendant's bribe. There's one moral man among us, Jesus. Let me just read this in full. After the security guard refused the defendant's bribe, and after coordination between the defendant and his employees, the defendant's staff contacted other members of hotel security. At the same time, staff members were in close communication with the victim of the assault as well, Cassie, all in an effort to cover up the defendant's assault and to prevent the incident from being publicly disclosed. Within days of the incident, the surveillance video disappeared from the hotel server. Who had it all this time? I swear for baby black Jesus, if this man had that security footage, was the only person with it, and the only reason we saw it this year was because somebody got it from his goddamn house, I personally want to punch him in the face. Like, how dumb can you be to keep evidence of criminal activity? My God. Similarly, through the time period charged in the indictment, Members and associates of the enterprise have reached out to multiple victims on behalf of the defendant to convince them not to report the defendant's abuse. Oh, we talked about this. Most recently, late 2023, immediately following public allegations of certain of the defendant's crimes, including his physical and sexual abuse of women, the defendant and other members of the enterprise made repeated phone calls to victims and witnesses, during which they provided victims and witnesses with false narratives of events in an effort to conceal the defendant's crimes. And then they talk about how he recorded the shit twice, idiot. We're still on page 6. It talks about the government's investigation is ongoing. The indictment against the defendant was unsealed today. The investigation into his and other co-conspirators' conduct is active and ongoing. That means you, Harv. I hope you're on the plane. As a result of that ongoing investigation, as well as the defendant's charged conduct outlined above, including obstruction of justice and witness tampering, the government is limited in its ability to fully set forth all known details of the defendant's criminal conduct, including details of certain witness testimony. Let's see, we're on page 7. It's making the argument, it's listing a whole bunch of U.S. codes and cases where precedent was set on why somebody like Diddy shouldn't be released. This is page 8. It talks about the defendant's dangerousness, literally dangerousness. The defendant is charged with serious and violent crimes. As charged in the indictment, the defendant has physically and sexually abused women and others for the better parts of 2 decades. More like 3 if the other lawsuits are to be believed, but okay. Let me just read the first part, even though it's going over something we've already covered. I need to tell you about that to get to the next part. It says the sex trafficking charge based on the defendant's abusive conduct, count 2, carries with it a presumption of detention. Since at least 2008, the defendant has engaged in serious acts of violence, including forcing and coercing women to participate in sexual activity, including sex acts with commercial sex workers, by using physical force, financial pressure, emotional abuse, and narcotics. These acts, described in detail above, are referred to as freak-offs, blah, 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 blah. That is not all. This is the new part. As set forth in the indictment, the charges against the defendant capture significant additional violence, both spontaneous and premeditated. On numerous occasions, the defendant assaulted women, employees, and others when he became enraged by throwing objects at them, choking them, pushing them, kicking them, and slamming them against walls and onto the ground. The defendant and other members and associates of the enterprise were also capable of premeditated violence, resorting to kidnapping and arson when the defendant's power and control were threatened. The defendant's violence, whether spontaneous or premeditated, had the effect of exerting his continued control over these individuals. The defendant also carried firearms to intimidate and threaten others. Multiple defaced semi-automatic rifles were recovered when law enforcement searched the defendant's residences in March 2024. In short, the conduct with which the defendant is charged shows a pattern of violent and abusive conduct, underscoring his dangerousness. This disposition to violence cannot be reasonably prevented through bail conditions. The violence alleged in the indictment was not isolated or aberrational. It was systemic and pervasive. The defendant has abused countless others in his orbit, and in particular women, without regard for consequences. Indeed, the defendant's abuse of women long predates the conduct charged in the indictment. To date, at least 5 women have publicly accused the defendant of violent sexual assaults dating back to the 1990s. Moreover, the defendant's violence and abuse often occurred behind closed doors, including in his homes, hotels where he was staying, and other private settings. He has assaulted victims, employees, and others, and even brandished a firearm at a victim in his homes. The alleged sex trafficking similarly took place in private settings not easily monitored. Indeed, in addition to engaging in freak-offs at hotels, the defendant has, at times, organized freak-offs at his home or at the homes of his female victims. I know you wasn't doing this shit in the house where you stay with your children, sir. I know you wasn't. This is precisely the kind of violence that even strict conditions such as home incarceration cannot prevent. In sum, the defendant's long history of violent conduct makes clear that even the most stringent bail conditions will not suffice to ensure the safety of the community. The defendant is a serial abuser who repeatedly assaults and coerces women to achieve his own sexual gratification and uses his vast wealth and position of power in the entertainment industry to conceal his illegal conduct and prevent victims of and witnesses to his abuse from coming forward. The defendant's long-standing pattern of abuse is probative evidence of the likelihood that he will continue to abuse. Indeed, nothing, not even the threat of public exposure or law enforcement intervention, has stopped his abuse. We're on page 9. They're talking about obstruction. As part of the racketeering conspiracy, the defendant engaged in obstruction of justice, including bribery and witness tampering. This is a repeat, but it takes us somewhere new. It says, as detailed in the indictment following a freak-off in March 2016, the defendant attempted to bribe hotel security staff. We talked about that. The defendant's efforts to disclaim responsibility for that attack continued until earlier this year. A civil lawsuit was filed on or about November 16, 2023, Cassie, alleging years of sexual, emotional, verbal, and physical abuse by the defendant. Following the filing of the lawsuit, the defendant stated in no uncertain terms, "Let me be absolutely clear. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged." Through counsel, the defendant, quote, vehemently denied these offensive and outrageous allegations, describing the complaint as, quote, riddled with baseless and outrageous lies. It was not until the video surveillance footage of the defendant's attack was leaked to the media months later that the defendant was forced to admit that he had, in fact, perpetrated the quote and unquote disgusting attack. The document continues, clearly the defendant is willing to deflect, minimize, and lie, and induce others to do so on his behalf to avoid taking responsibility for his own actions. It says, most recently, the defendant has directly and through intermediaries engaged in obstructive conduct related to the matters under investigation in this case. Specifically, following the November 2023 lawsuit, the defendant and intermediaries acting on his behalf reached out to potential victims and witnesses to the alleged conduct, including individuals he did not speak to regularly and had not spoken to in years, to attempt to feed those victims and witnesses false narratives about the defendant's criminal conduct. With respect to at least two of these individuals, the defendant's co-conspirators assisted in efforts to protect the defendant. For example, on or about November 19, 2023, just 3 days after the filing of the lawsuit described above, the Cassie lawsuit, the defendant made multiple calls to another victim of his sexual abuse and recorded certain of those calls using the cell phone of a co-conspirator. During the calls, he's a fucking idiot. Why would he record this? During the calls, the defendant repeatedly asked for the victim's support and friendship and attempted to convince the victim that she had willingly engaged in acts constituting sexual abuse. The defendant also assured the victim that if she, quote, needed the defendant to, she ain't got worry about nothing else. A thinly veiled attempt to coerce the victim into adopting and supporting the defendant's false version of events to protect the defendant. Even more concerning, including following the execution of search warrants at his residence, Combs contacted other witnesses on multiple occasions, including other witnesses who had received grand jury subpoenas. Nigga, what the fuck are you paying these lawyers for? Have you never watched a mob movie? Have you never read a mob book? Did you never watch The Wire? The fuck are you doing? Oh my God, this shit's making me so mad. How goddamn dumb can you be, nigga? We're on page 11. They're talking about the man as a risk of flight. The crimes that the defendant is charged with carry significant penalties, including a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years imprisonment and a statutory maximum sentence of life imprisonment. As detailed below, the evidence in this case is incredibly powerful, as the facts set forth in the indictment and herein make plain. This wasn't in the indictment. Dozens of victims and witnesses have provided detailed, credible, and corroborated information against the defendant. Dozens. 24 is 24 people. I think they got more than that. It says these individuals include many who personally experienced and witnessed violence and other crimes at the hand of the defendant. Moreover, their accounts are well corroborated by significant extrinsic evidence, including financial and billing records, travel records, electronic data, and communications, including extensive communications by and with the defendant himself. For example, victim testimony regarding freak-offs is at times corroborated by other witness testimony, communications with the defendant and commercial sex workers, travel records, hotel records, videos of the freak-offs, because this nigga kept that shit, and records reflecting or indicating payment. Similarly, a victim's physical abuse may be corroborated by, among other things, videos of the abuse, photographs of injuries, reports made to law enforcement, communications with the defendant and others, and testimony from other witnesses who saw or heard about the abuse. The vast and varied sources of evidence described in detail will be compelling evidence of guilt at any trial in this case. Thus, the serious risk of conviction provides further incentive for the defendant to flee prosecution. Moreover, in this case, risk of flight is augmented by the nature of the evidence against the defendant. The evidence against the defendant, which would be made public at trial, includes substantial evidence that is highly sensitive and has the potential to significantly and negatively impact the defendant's reputation. For example, dozens of video recordings created by the defendant of freak-offs with victims. The defendant's incentive to flee, outlined above, coupled with the defendant's seemingly limitless resources, creates significant risk of non-appearance. The defendant's net worth, I told you, is publicly estimated at being close to $1 billion. Indeed, the investigation of this case has revealed that the defendant has access to vast funds and resources, including deep reserves of cash. Does he? Because why he putting up his mama house? Which would facilitate his evasion of prosecution. At least as of December 2023, the defendant had access to dozens of bank accounts, some personal and many under corporate entities, which contain millions of dollars. Additionally, as of December 2023, the defendant had over $1 million in personal cash on hand. The defendant has traveled internationally several times per year since at least 2006, and since approximately 2019 has owned a personal plane on which he has traveled internationally. The defendant maintains 2 primary residences in Los Angeles and Miami. In addition to his private plane, the defendant owns multiple vehicles in multiple locations. He has a personal staff, including assistants, security, chefs, trainers, and others who perform tasks at his command, including transporting him, delivering him currency, securing narcotics for him, and other tasks. He is extraordinarily well connected both within and outside the entertainment industry. In short, if the defendant wanted to flee, he has the money, manpower, and tools to do so quickly and without detection. The defendant's lack of access to his passport or private jet would not negate the fact that the defendant could easily buy his way out of facing justice. As discussed below, the defendant's legal team has attempted to mitigate the substantial risk of flight by taking steps such as taking his family's passports, attempting to sell his plane, and reporting his whereabouts to the government. These steps have been taken with the precise goal of crafting an argument for bail before the court. While the defendant may have made a calculated decision in consultation with his attorneys not to flee before any charges were filed, That calculus inevitably changes today when an indictment charging the defendant with extremely serious offenses carrying enormous potential penalties was unsealed. He is now, for the first time in his life, facing a mandatory minimum term of imprisonment and a maximum term of imprisonment for life, in which the government is prepared to prove the charges against him by, among other things, again, the testimony of dozens of witnesses and victims to his serial abuse and evidence from dozens of his own electronic devices and those of his co-conspirators. Given the serious nature of the charges, the strength of the evidence, and the defendant's access to vast amounts of resources, his risk of flight is more pronounced today than it has ever been. It goes further to talk about the weight of evidence. This case consists of vast amount of victim and witness testimony, electronic evidence, physical evidence, and subpoena returns and other voluntary productions, among other things. As to witnesses to date, now we have a number. The government has conducted interviews with over 50 victims and witnesses, many of whom saw or experienced the defendant's abuse. Many of these witnesses corroborate one another, and their accounts are similarly consistent with other types of evidence discussed below. The government only expects that number to continue to grow, given that the investigation, which is now public, is ongoing. The electronic evidence is similarly vast. The government has sought and obtained numerous search warrants for such evidence, in addition to obtaining evidence voluntarily from certain victims and witnesses. Setting aside devices seized in connection with the defendant's arrest, the government has obtained, Jesus Christ, 90 cell phones, laptops, and cloud storage accounts, as well as over 30 electronic and storage devices, such as hard drives, thumb drives, cameras, and a surveillance system. This electronic data comes from the defendant himself, as well as co-conspirators, victims, witnesses, and chronicles much of the defendant's criminal activity as it occurs. Finally, the evidence includes records obtained pursuant to over 300 grand jury subpoenas and other voluntary productions. What are other voluntary productions? I was thinking like TV stuff, but that's just because the word production is there. Like, is there B-roll from like MTV making the band? But all of that is before 2009, unless you're talking about season 5, which is what Dawn references in her lawsuit. Continued. These materials come from over 100 entities and individuals, including communications providers, tech companies, social media companies, banks, other financial institutions, airlines, hotels, car services, and other travel-related companies, escort services, and even the defendant's companies and wealth management firms. Together, this evidence, as well as other evidence gathered, powerfully demonstrates the defendant's guilt and counsels in favor of detention. Still on page 14. It says the defendant's proposed bail package is insufficient. The man is putting up $50 million. The government argues there is no bail package that can reasonably assure the safety of others in this case, where the defendant has engaged in a decades-long pattern of violence against women and others, and has used his wealth and power to ensure his criminal conduct goes unpunished through manipulative and obstructive conduct. In particular, the bail package proposed by defense counsel is insufficient because it fails to adequately protect others from the defendant's violence, impose measures to prevent and detect obstruction, or prevent the defendant from accessing his vast resources, including millions of dollars in cash. Notably, the defendant's previously proposed conditions do not include provisions related to his access to electronic devices, which, as outlined above, the defendant uses to engage in obstructive conduct. Nor do the proposed conditions include information related to or restrictions on access to defendant's vast resources, including multiple personal bank accounts in the name of the defendant's businesses, and deep cash reserves, which could facilitate the defendant's flight. Similarly, the proposed conditions failed to protect against dissipation of assets, which may be subject to forfeiture or penalties on the charges in the indictment. Finally, the proposed conditions do not include conditions that would limit the defendant's potential to engage in violence or abuse, such as drug testing and treatment and surrender of all firearms. In conclusion, the defendant poses an ongoing and significant danger to the community, has repeatedly engaged in obstructive conduct, and presents a serious risk of flight. The government respectfully submits that the defendant cannot meet his burden of overcoming the statutory presumption in favor of detention. There are no conditions of bail that would assure the appearance and compliance of the defendant or the safety of others. Accordingly, any application for bail should be denied. Jesus. Last but not least, because this happened while we were recording, I want to see if there's a statement from the judge on why Diddy was denied bail. Let's see what Variety has. I'm reading this on Variety. It notes, when asked for a plea, Combs said not guilty. I saw some people earlier today saying that Combs might take a plea to avoid this going to trial. There was no possibility that he was going to do that. His ego is too large. Variety notes that not guilty, the only two words he uttered at the 2-hour hearing at federal court in downtown Manhattan. The judge decided that there were no conditions that can guarantee Combs' appearance in court. She said that she considered alternatives such as home detention and the substantial bond offered by Combs, but ultimately concluded that the presumption in favor of detention had not been rebutted by the defense. Everything else in this article is a summary of the documents I just read to you. Combs' attorney argued with the judge, pleaded with the judge to trust Combs and to trust him as the attorney and keeping an eye on the defendant. His attorney said that Combs is currently getting, quote, treatment and therapy in New York, arguing that detaining his client would prevent Combs from getting, quote, the help he needs. His attorney argued, quote, everybody has flaws. Mr. Combs is not a perfect person. In her decision, the judge addressed Combs and said, quote, I don't know that you can trust yourself, pointing to his history of substance abuse and anger issues. Combs' lawyer says that he plans to file an appeal regarding the denial of bail. This is the interesting tidbit, still reading on Variety. It says Combs' lawyers claim that the freak-offs were entirely consensual, arguing that the government is, quote, coming into this man's bedroom with their charges. His lawyer says that there was no sex trafficking because, quote, everybody wanted to be there. Really? Let me get one more story. Deadline is reporting the defendant, that would be Combs, regarding his bail can make a Hail Mary appeal to district court, though it is unlikely they would overturn the judge's decision. This is about to be the trial of the century. I wonder if the media is going to run this like they did the OJ trial. You think they'll preempt network to run the Diddy trial? It's going to take over CNN and MSNBC, for sure. They'll get their ratings back up on this one. Also, he's not going to trial until at least sometime in 2025. He's going to be sitting in jail for a minute. This is crazy. This is crazy. All right, that's the episode. We'll talk again on Friday. We'll probably be talking about the same shit. Might be talking about it for a while. That's okay. It ain't boring this week. I'll give it that. All right. Talk soon. Friday, for sure. All right. Bye.
Today's episode is brought to you by Angie. Angie has made it easier than ever to connect with skilled professionals to get all your jobs and projects done well. Let me tell you, there's the version of it where you try to do something at home, and then there's a version of it where you have someone help you, you watch them do it the right way, and you go, thank God I didn't try to do that myself. I have fully done things around the home that I think look good, and then a bang in the night, and I wake up to a shelf collapsing, a painting falling off the wall. I've seen it all go south. I own a home, and I can tell you, I know how much work it can take. Whether it's everyday maintenance and repairs or making dream projects a reality, it can be hard just to know where to start. But now all you need to do is Angie that and find a skilled local pro who will deliver the quality and expertise you need. Whatever your home project, big or small, indoor or outdoor, you can Angie that and connect with skilled professionals to get the project done well. Right now, one of my wish lists is I want a bike for my condo in Milwaukee, and I would love to rig it up on a pulley in the ceiling because I have one of those lofted ceilings, but I'm so scared to try that on my own. Angie has 20 years of home experience, and they've combined it with new tools to simplify the whole process. Bring them your project online or with the Angie app. Answer a few questions and Angie can handle the rest from start to finish, or help you compare quotes from multiple pros and connect instantly, which means you can take care of any home project in just a few taps. Because when it comes to getting the most out of your home, you can do this when you Angie that. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com.
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I bet you're looking for a group of moms to get real with. We are Cheyenne,
R, and Shannon. Think Loud Crew is our name.
We talk about the behind the scenes of what you see when it comes to parenting and relationships, navigating motherhood, and building our empires, all mixed in with our moments of what actually just happened.
We're those moms that like to keep it real, so at times it gets raw.
But who are we to judge?
Think Loud Crew is our name. We speak out loud on what we feel and experience.
Without being judged, we welcome you to join our crew over at the Think Loud Crew podcast.
3 moms getting real with parenthood, relationships, and the WTF moments of our daily lives.
You can find us wherever you get your podcast. Think Loud Crew.